to Sun Coast. God of the impossible, you know my name, and you know my story. And no mountain could ever stop the plans you've made. Well, your heart is for me. Come on. And I believe in your name. Well, miracles can happen. I believe in your name. Well, miracles can happen. Yeah. The blind will see, the sick will stand. Sing hallelujah with confidence. When we can love, your mercy waits. Sing hallelujah and live again. When the light from every side say you're good, say it's over. Come on. I remember 1,000 times your love has won. This is far from over. I believe in your name. Miracles can happen. I believe in your name. Miracles can happen. The blind will see, the sick will stand. Sing hallelujah with confidence. When we can love, your mercy waits. Sing hallelujah and live again. Let's sing it out. Oh, Jesus, Jesus, your love is breaking chains right now, right now. And Jesus, Jesus, there's hope found in your name right now, right now. Do we believe it? Come on. Jesus, your love say that's what faith is for. When I see a flood, you see a promise. When I see a grave, you see a door. And when I'm at my end, you see where the future starts. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. You've been good on every promise, from Eden to Zion, through every day, and out of that grave. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. And when my world inside the darkness, a place where my heart is scared. You call me there. Remind my fear, your love is overcoming. In this darkness, you wanted me to know you're here. In the unknown, I've never known so much. In this mystery, where fear is taught to love, here my wonder can wander away. And my restless heart can rest inside your grace. You're the arms that hold me, my silence. guys for singing out with us. Enjoy the rest of the service.
As the hero's heart swells with zeal, and his mind's eye sharpens with fresh perspective, steady hands prepare the sacrifice. As the sacred heart beats within, and the mind surveys the mission, will the hands follow in holiness? Epic.
Guys, check. Am I on? Check. Yes. Good morning, Suncoast. Glad you guys are here. My name is Dr. Troy Doucet, and I'm a teaching pastor here. So whether you are joining us live in the flesh or if you're watching on one of our live streaming online, we are so glad that you're here. And if you're kind of inclined, how many of you guys love what happens here in Suncoast? Anybody? So here's what you can do. I think this mission of this church is worthy to be spread, I think. So if you're watching at home or even if you're in the sanctuary, what you can do is you can share this live stream in your news feed on Facebook. And what it's going to do is it actually furthers our reach for this life-changing message that not only I speak, but Pastor Brett speaks and Pastor Larry speaks. So if you're inclined, do that and watch this message spread of God's love for all people. So we are in the middle of an epic series about this Old Testament prophet named Elijah, who lived 3,000 years ago. But yet what we're trying to do is mine out some principles, some truths that we can apply to our lives here and now. And so today, what I want to take a look at is, in this epic journey, is look at the significance of our position before God and before others. Because why? Positioning is important to get perspective. Any hunters in here? Anybody ever been hunting before? Whether you're for or against hunting, I grew up in Louisiana, and we'd always set up a deer stand, and we'd position the deer stand so that we had a perspective of the bigger forest, right? You never put the deer stand in the middle of the trees because you didn't have the perspective to see an opening. And even as a philosophy professor, I would use this sort of social experiment with my kids, my students, to show them the importance of a position and how it relates to giving us perspective. So I would take an object like this, like a remote control, and I'd say, now class, tell me, what do you see? And they'd say, well, Professor Doucet, it's a remote control. And I go, yeah, that's what I see too. Now tell me, what do you see? And they'd say, well, it has like a green button on it. And I was like, you're full of it. I don't see a green button. And no, but I see it. It's got a red button too. And I'd be like, no, baloney. How dare you lie to me? And they're like, no, turn it around. And I go, oh. But yet we were looking at the exact same what? Object. But the position of it determined my perspective. And a lot of times what we do is we have to maneuver our position, hopefully that the lens of our life begins to see the world and begins to see others in the way that God sees them, from God's perspective. So it's all about having the right position to start with. In this story, Elijah is going to be placed in a position where he has to take a side, right? This relates because in the idea that Elijah is presenting us, it's all about getting off of the fence and doing something with the faith that you claim to have. Elijah is facing a huge problem of position here because he is facing the king of Israel, Ahab. And it's about getting off the fence of indecision, because a lot of times in our life, we're reluctant to take sides on a position because maybe we feel like we'll be canceled by culture or family for taking a stand on this. Maybe we feel like we don't really know enough about the issue. We're not really educated enough. Or maybe we feel we'll be judged by that position we take. But the truth is, one of my professors at Oxford, his name was Dr. Vitale, he'd often say this, and I think I've shared this analogy. He'd say, beware the sound of one hand clapping. Because if there's an argument or a position to be had on one side, there is bound to be a position to be had on the other side. And regardless of the position you take, there will always be an opposition to it. Does that make sense? But I'm here to tell you today that even in the face of fierce opposition, you have an opportunity to experience God's power in the face of that opposition in and through your life. If I ask a Christian today, would you like to experience like the authentic power of God in your life? Most of us would say, absolutely. What do I have to do? Well, hopefully today we could take some steps to see how we can begin to position ourselves to gain a perspective of God's eye view of the world and the people that he created, and then to put a process into place that we can live out in our daily life. And I think that's how the power of God works for us today. But let's look at this passage to see what's going on with Elijah and how he is right now getting off of the fence of indecision and positioning himself to experience God's power. It comes from 1 Kings. Here's what it says. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, what did he tell him from last week? Elijah's coming to meet you. So Ahab went out to meet Elijah. And when he saw him, he said this, "Is that you troublemaker of Israel?" "I have not made trouble for Israel," Elijah replied, "but you and your father's family have. You've abandoned the Lord Yahweh's commands and have followed the teachings of Baal, the false god of nature. Now summon the people, the Israelites, from all over Israel to meet on Mount Carmel. Bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." So Ahab sent word throughout Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel like Elijah required. And Elijah says to the people, "How long will you waver between" what? "Two opinions. If the Lord Yahweh is God, then follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." But look what the people do. Staying on the fence, refusing to take a position. They say nothing. Then Elijah said, "Let's take a position. I am the only one of the Lord's prophets that's left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls. Let Baal's prophet choose one, and let them cut it into pieces and place it on the wood for the offering and not set it to fire yet. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood for a sacrifice, but not set it to fire yet. And we'll call on the name of our gods," right? You call on your God, Baal. I will call on the name of Yahweh, and whoever's God answers by fire on this sacrifice is the real true God. And the people said, "Sounds good to us," right? This is important because the question I want to examine today is, how can we begin to position ourselves in such a way that we can truly experience the authentic power of God in our everyday life, even when we know there's going to be fierce opposition? Why? Because as I said, opposition presents great opportunity. Now, when I talk about the self and positioning ourselves, this is highly debated in psychology and philosophy, but for us today, I just want to kind of boil it down to what makes you you is 3 things. Pretty simple. I call them the 3 H's. Your head, your heart, and your hands. Your head is your thinkerly self, right? This is the part of you that thinks, that has a rational side, right? It's logical, and it knows when things don't really make sense. Your heart is sort of the seat of your emotions and what you feel, how you feel in existence. But it's also the seat of like your sensibilities, your 5 senses of touch, taste, smell, sight, and sound. And we rely on this most of all to kind of make our way through life, right? With our senses. You know when you smell pizza, you know when you hear good music. All of these sensibilities help us to sort of constitute and situate our existence. But the last thing is our hands. This is our volitional side. This is how living gets itself done. It's how we interact with the world and how we actually put into action our free will and decisions. And it's when I place my entire self in position, my head, my heart, and my hands, to say, "God, use it all to wire me up to see the world as you see it." Because a lot of times, like here's an example. Anybody ever watch a magic show before? Anybody ever seen a magician. I remember I was in Vegas, and this street magician was doing some card tricks. And I remember I was with some buddies of mine, and we go over, and he's got the cards out. Now, all of my senses in that moment are engaged. Like, I'm the philosophy professor. I'm looking at this magician like, oh, bro, you're not going to fool me. I'm smarter than you. Like, I could smell his cologne. I actually touched the cards. I could hear his voice. I could literally taste the surroundings. All of my 5 senses are engaged, and I'm watching him do this magic trick. And he made my buddy sign a card. Like, he pulled a random card out of the deck, and Andy signed it. He stuck it back in. And that same card ended up in some other lady's purse, like a few people down. Now, what do you think's the first question I asked this magician after he pulled this illusion? No, I said, how much did you sell your soul to Satan for to do this trick, right? No, I asked a rational question. I said, how'd you do that? Why? Because all of my senses, right, from my heart were fooled. But even when my sensibilities are fooled, what kicks in? My reason. And it's when I place myself, my reason, my head, my heart and hands before God, I can experience the life-giving power of God. Now, all of us have experienced the life-changing love of God, but there's something radically different about being in a position where God can work in and through you to sort of manifest his power. Because let's face it, there's been a lot of people throughout history who have claimed to be on the side of God and have used the name of God to do horrible and horrific things in humanity. Am I right? Right? We've marginalized women and used the Bible to justify it. We've enslaved people of color and used the Bible or God's name to justify it. We've oppressed people because of their sexual orientation and used the Bible to justify it. I've heard this so many times I can't tell you. I've seen bumper stickers and t-shirts that say this: God said it, I believe it, that settles it. And as a biblical scholar, what I ask is, what if God never actually said that? To take a position with God, to put yourself in a position to be used by God, to see his power work in and through you is pretty simple. It simply means taking a position of love, to love people when they least expect it and when they least deserve it. Why? Because God is love, and love wins every time. I know I have 3 children. I have a 15, a 13, and an 11-year-old. And I know at some point in their life, they are going to make a decision that is going to devastate me, that is going to crush me, that's going to disappoint me. But it's even in the midst of their own failure, where they know and they recognize that what they've done is wrong, they still need to know that I am there and that I still love them, regardless of their failure. I might hate the action that they did, but I still love them. Even if I can't comprehend rationally the I don't know why of what they did, they can still stand on, I know he still will, because of who we are to him. And that's God's love for you. Your dad, your Father in heaven, loves you regardless of any failure. Why? Because that's the position we need to take as well. This brings me to point 1 today that I want to share with you guys. The position of your heart often determines the perspective of your head. In Elijah's case, he has experienced over and over in this epic journey we've been on God's provisions, even in the midst of constant problems and predicaments. And it's because of God's unstoppable and inseparable love that Elijah's heart is now in an uncompromising and immovable position in allegiance to God. His mind is now absolutely convinced that what he is doing is the right thing, and that now is the time to put his perspective into action because of the position of his heart. He goes to Ahab, and Ahab rejects this. Why? Because Ahab is in a position to not gain the perspective of what God has been doing, even in the midst of this drought that they're experiencing. Elijah is siding with Yahweh. Ahab is siding with the false god Baal. And there is fierce opposition. I've been in ministry a long time, and you want to know some of the most contentious conversations I ever had with parents when I was a youth minister have not been about why their son or daughter is backsliding, why their son or daughter is using drugs, or why their son or daughter is doing sinful things. You want to know what some of the most oppressing conversations I've had with parents? were when they'd come into my office and they'd say, "What the heck are you teaching my kid?" What do you mean? My son just came to us over dinner and he says that he doesn't want to go to Texas A&M for his freshman year. He wants to go to Malawi, Africa, and serve orphans in an orphanage for a year before he starts college. What the heck's going on in this youth ministry? And I was like, wait, Tanner, your son? Like, Tanner sits in the back row every Sunday, spitballs at me, makes out with the girls in the Sunday school. I thought your son was going to hell, not to Malawi, Africa. And of course, I'm being facetious. Why? Because at some point in Tanner's life, his heart convinced his mind that God is real and God can use me to do amazing things through his power. I'll go to A&M later, Mom. I'll go to A&M later, Dad, but now I got a higher calling to go and follow. That's been some of the most contentious things. Why? Because it doesn't matter what side you take, there will always be opposition, even when you take the side of wanting to follow God. Point number 2 I want to share with you guys. If you want to write it down, go ahead. The perspective of our head is often limited without the process of our hands. What do I mean by this? Your beliefs don't determine your behavior. Elijah doesn't go to the people of Israel and say, "Hey, everybody gather around." As long as you believe that, if you believe in your mind and your heart that Yahweh's God, check. Great job, guys. No. He says, I'm taking a position and I'm going to take action based on my position and my perspective, and now I got to put a process in place. Because the truth is, you can believe all the right things with your head and never be responsible for actually doing them with your hands. And thus, you never become what your core beliefs require of you. I can believe helping homeless people's good, just don't obligate me to do it. I can believe that God loves all people, not that guy. The problem with this and the problem for modern Christianity is this, is that we've reduced Christianity to a set of beliefs that I check off my list. And if I believe this, check, I'm good. You believe Jesus is the Son of God? Check. Believe Jesus walked on water? Check. Believe Jesus rose from the dead? Check. Cool. You got your checks. But you know what? If you read the book of James, you know what the book of James says? You believe all this? Awesome. The demons believe the same thing. So what's the difference? Whether or not you believe in demons is a conversation for somewhere else, but here's what James is saying. You could write this down or take a mental note. James's point is this: belief without becoming is barren. Your beliefs without action are empty, void, pointless. Why? Because it's powerless. Your beliefs need to go from your heart to your head to your hands and take action. Point 3 today. The process of our hands, it's actually when we put flesh to our beliefs, opens up our life to the possibility to experience God's true power. You know what's interesting is when you read the Gospel of John chapter 1, it says this awesome verse: the Word became flesh. The word there that becomes flesh is this Greek word logos, and it's a funny word. It's a very contentious word in scholarly circles, but ultimately we translate it to mean word, speech, thought, or creative force. But when we look at it in the context of what God is doing, how does God bring about the very existence of the universe? He doesn't merely conduct a thought experiment. God speaks the logos and creates reality. The logos is the very creative power of God. It's not only a power that can bring about the existence of worlds and galaxies, it's the same power that can free people from addiction. God's words, his logos, can change your life. God's words, his logos, can heal wounds. God's words can send a troublemaking teenager to Malawi, Africa for a year to serve orphans. God's word, the logos, can get a heretic pastor from Tennessee to start a movement here in Sarasota called Suncoast. That's the power of God's Logos. And here's what's awesome. That very same power exists in you right now. And here's what I want to say. And if that power exists from the very speaking of God's word into creation, and if God is love, then it stands to reason that the only words, the only Logos that will come forth from God's being are words of love itself. Why else do we create things if not for love? We create music, why? Because we love it. We create art because we love it. We create memories out of the love for those we share them with. And what happened is the very Logos of God, the very word, the very creative force became flesh in Jesus. And I'm here to tell you that very same creative force of God's love and power can enflesh itself in you. The word we use in theology is called incarnation. And this word literally means to become flesh. One of my major influences in philosophy is a guy named Charles Taylor, and he coined this term excarnation, which is the antithesis or the opposite of becoming flesh. Excarnation is this idea that Christianity is no longer following the model of Jesus, where God's creative force, his Logos, becomes enfleshed within us to change the world. Excarnation is the removal of that responsibility to actually live out our beliefs. And when the church becomes excarnated, you know what it becomes? A system of creeds, a system of doctrines, a system of believe this and you're good. Today, do you guys know today, as many as 3,500 churches close their doors every year? Why? Because culture is so disenchanted with Christianity, because Christianity is no longer about living out God's love for other people in the world. It's not the word becoming flesh anymore. A lot of times Christianity is just a bunch of flesh that's all about our words. Kind of the do as I say, right, and not as I do. I want Suncoast to be a church that enfleshes, that embodies the very Logos and love of God, even in the face of fierce oppression. And there's a way to do that. And it starts by positioning ourselves and asking God, put me in a position that my perspective changes so that the process of my hands can love people even when it's hard, even when I don't understand. I want to share a story with you that I got to experience about this power of positioning ourselves. One of my good friends, her name is Kathy. She started a ministry in Central City of New Orleans back in, I think it was 2007. And she called it the Apex Center, Always Pursuing Excellence. And this was just a little sort of kind of like a daycare for students in New Orleans, Central City, that they could come and go as they please. And she started this because right after Katrina hit, Central City was experiencing about 3 homicides per day in that area of New Orleans. It was horrible. Now, here's this little white lady going into a predominantly black area to start a little daycare for at-risk students aged 5 to 14 who basically just walk the streets of New Orleans. Now, she started this because she herself put herself in a position and had a very different perspective and wanted to put her life in process to serve God. She was a graduate student at Michigan State University. One night, she's putting gas in her car. A car pulls up next to her, back window rolls down, and a rifle comes out and shoots her in the face. She obviously survives. But she told me this story. She said, Troy, from my position and perspective, the 13-year-old kid who they caught had more fear on his face for what he was about to do than I had on mine for what was about to happen to me. And she said, I made a decision to take a position that I would stop this from happening as much as my power would allow. And she found the worst city to go to right after Katrina, where murders were happening to the tune of 3 a day, and some were children in the crossfire. We got to serve there for a week. But now you have to remember, I'm bringing kids from Frisco, Texas, a highly affluent area in North Dallas. All of my kids were white. All of my kids were upper middle class. And here we are going to minister, to share the love of God, the Logos, to enflesh ourselves with God's love for these people, these children. We get there on Monday, and there's no check-in system. There's no name badge. Kids just come as they want. And we're trying to do crafts and games and athletics and Bible stories. And it was all of my seniors. I had about 50 seniors, juniors and seniors that were part of that group that served at the Apex. And that night, Monday night, we get back to our lodging, and they call an emergency meeting with me. So I walk into this room with, my 50, 60 seniors and juniors, and they're like, hey, Troy, we need to have a meeting. I was like, what's up? And they're like, we're not going back. What do you mean you're not going back? Those kids are horrible. They were calling our girls fat B words, cursing us out, starting fights with the staff. And I said, oh, we're not going back. We're not going back. I said, oh, not only are we going back, we're going back earlier because you need some perspective. You are in a position for God to use you, but your perspective's off. So we'll give you some perspective. So I called Kathy on the phone. And I said, can we come in about an hour earlier and you give us some perspective? And she goes, oh, I got plenty of perspective. We show up an hour earlier. She's got like 12 kids on the stage, ranging from like age 5 to 10. And she looks at my students and she goes, how many of you guys here ever thought a fire truck, its purpose was to wash blood off of the street after a crime? My kids are looking at each other like, is this a trick question? And she looks at her kids. How many of you guys thought that? Every hand goes up. She goes, how many of you guys from Frisco ever had to walk through yellow tape from your house to get to school? About like 70% of their hands go up. Perspective. And I just looked at my students and I said, when we say that they're not good enough for our love, we're saying they're not good enough for God's. But there was one kid in particular. His name was Luther. Luther was 14 years old, 6'7", weighed about 100 pounds soaking wet. And oh my God, the kids nicknamed him Lucifer. That's what they nicknamed him. He was so bad. He was always starting stuff. He would start stuff with me. But there was one of my leaders, one of my senior leaders named Alex. Man, him and Luther were at each other's throats day in and day out. And I'm like, Alex, dude, you're 17. This kid's 14. He's like, Lucifer, I can't stand him. I was like, his name's Luther. Man, Luther would always disobey. He'd always start stuff, never went to where he was supposed to go, and he enjoyed it. He like thrived in the chaos. And one day, Thursday, our last day there, I'm seeing our students break through because a lot of these kids are now that we're calling them bad names, calling them fat, calling them ugly, are now hugging them and crying because it's our last day. And I saw God use my students because they positioned themselves and got the right perspective and let God use them in the process of showing love. And here's Luther. He's walking out, kind of strutting out of the... And here comes Miss Kathy out of her office. And she's like, Luther? And he turns around. And she's like, get over here. He's like, yes, ma'am. I was like, where have you been all week, lady? Like, where have you been? Listen to what she says. She goes, Luther, are you ready for school tomorrow? And in my mind, I'm going, wait, I thought they started school Monday because we leave tomorrow. We have a little prayer walk. And she goes, no, Luther goes to a charter school. He starts tomorrow. Luther, are you ready for school? He's like, no, ma'am, Miss Kathy, no. She goes, why not? He goes, I just don't have a uniform. What do you need? He goes, I need some khaki pants and a shirt. Have you looked in my husband's closet? Yeah, Mr. Charlie, he's too short. And she goes, what are you gonna do, Luther? And he goes, I'm just not gonna go. And from that position and that perspective, God showed me this, that violence, truancy, a hard heart, doesn't always start with someone who's just a bad kid. It starts with a kid who doesn't freaking have clothes to go to school, because if he goes out of uniform, what are they gonna do? kick him out anyway. So I look at Luther. I said, Luther, go jump in my van. I'm going to take you get some clothes. And he's like, what? And Kathy goes, wait, Troy, I think we should call his dad. His dad's like 6'9", like 300 pounds, and a very proud man. I said, get him on the phone. And she hands me the phone. And I hear this mammoth of a man who worked for the sanitation department of New Orleans on the other line go, I'd really be appreciative if you could help my son. And I was like, Mr. Whitehouse, you got it. So Luther and I walk out. I said, get in my van, Luther. He jumps in the front seat. I jump in the driver's seat. Sitting right behind me is Alex. Alex looks at me and goes, Troy, what the heck are you doing? I was like, what do you mean? He goes, why is Luther here? I was like, oh, Luther's coming with us. No, man, no, not Lucifer. And I was like, he can hear you. He's like, I don't care, man. Like, I'm done with this dude. And I was like, Alex, chill, dude. I said, you're about to see how the power of God really works. And he's like, whatever, bro. And he sits back, puts his earphones on, and is just distant. I drive to Target, and I made every van follow me for my high schoolers. Follow and watch. And I have 60 students following me and Luther through Target. And we get to the khaki rack. And I said, all right, Luther, what size are you? Like 28, 48? Like, what's your size, homie? He's like, I think I'm this size. And he puts one pair. And I go, dude, they're more of your size here. Do you need navy blue ones too? Here. I said, what color shirts do you need for school? Luther, he goes, I need white. So we throw in like medium whites in there. And he goes, and baby blue. And I go, baby blue? I said, I don't think I've ever seen a black dude in New Orleans wear baby blue before. And he starts laughing. And my kids are looking at each other like, this kid hasn't laughed all week unless he was causing trouble. And I look at his shoes, and he has holes this big in his shoes. And I said, Luther, if you could have any shoe you want, what would you get? Oh, anything's good. Anything's good. No, what would you want? You know, those new LeBrons look tight. Let's go. It's a Foot Locker. Go across the street, 60 students following me and Luther, size 13 and a half on this 14-year-old boy. $220 later. And I'm paying for this with my card. And my students are watching watching a heart being radically ruined for God in front of their eyes. The guy they called Lucifer, they see him softening up. And he gets in my van and he's beside himself. And I said, Luther, you owe me for this. And he's like, I ain't got no money. I said, no. We're about to go to the homeless shelter in 20 minutes where 300 people who don't have a house are waiting for us to feed them, do music, and me preach. I need your help. Luther's like, I got to check with my dad. I already did. He said, as long as I bring you home. I get up and I preach this sermon about how society places labels on us. And oftentimes we can think we're something that we're not just because we've been positioned in the wrong way. And it's all about understanding who you are in God's eyes. And there are 300 homeless people in this room. And I say, how many guys want me to pray for you? Please come forward. And I'm thinking maybe 20, 30 people. 200 people get up and come forward. And I'm like, oh, Mike, what have I done? There's no way I could pray for all these people. So some of my leaders come, and I step down on the stage to start just praying and ministering to people who've been moved by this message. And the first dude I run into standing right at the front of the altar is 6'7" Luther. So looking at me with tears flowing down his eyes. And I go, Luther, what do you want? He's like, I don't know. What do you want me to do? Pray for me. Just pray for me. How do you want me to pray, Luther? I just want more God. I just want more God. And I look him in his eyes and I say, Luther, I'm not praying for you. And he gives me this like, what? I said, the dude standing behind you is. And he turns around and there's Alex. And those two boys hugged. And I finally got a picture of it. And that picture stayed on my shelf for a long time. Now it's in my boxes somewhere in storage. That's the power of positioning myself to get a unique perspective from God's eye view and then putting it from belief to action. And you could change the world Even if the world is just a 14-year-old kid who lives in a place where he just needs reassurance every day that God is there, God loves you, and we have enfleshed ourselves with that very love of God to show you how much you are loved by your Heavenly Father. Let me pray for you guys. Stand up and I'll dismiss you. Gracious and good God, I pray for my friends here at Suncoast that we would begin to move, to position ourselves, to get a new perspective of how you see the world so that we can take action and put a process in place where your love is not only known in our heads, but experienced in our heart because of the action of our hands. God, there's an entire city out there who needs to hear that they are loved, that they belong, that they are accepted exactly as they are. Thank you for a place called Suncoast, God, where we can go and love the world because we love each other as well. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Thank you, guys.